Welcome to this episode of Inside Aviation. I'm Kevin.
Ryan.
And today we have a conversation later on with Laura and Jason from Infinite Flight. That's a flight simulator that's pretty complex in a great way for mobile devices. So that's iPads, iPhones, and Android phones, right? So we'll get into that a little later. It's kind of cool. I didn't know there was something that accessible to the community that wasn't PC based, which I actually got to email Jason because I got to get in there on my iPad and start flying around. But, speaking of iPads, perfect segue into ForeFlight's new new feature of...
It's almost like you set that up.
Yeah, almost like I set it up. Reported turbulence map, which I think is interesting because PyReps are cool and all, but they're, pretty spread out. And whenever I've gone flying and have, tried, you do keep an eye out for PyReps or, any weather reports, NOTAMs, all that. But you don't really know exactly where you're going to hit the turbulence. So I feel like this is kind of geared towards like, hey, we're going to try to zero in exactly where you're going to start hitting it and what altitude. Because I've been through areas that have like SIGMETs about, talking about turbulence and totally smooth. But I guarantee you, a few miles over, you're probably getting like sloshed around. I see this as pretty helpful for just, passenger planning for the GA side. But what do you think as an airline guy that GA is kind of like adopting this?
No. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but some airlines, I don't want to speak for all of them, have a similar software available on the company issued iPads that actually can sense the motion of the aircraft and use that to make a report based on, the severity of the turbulence level, whether it's moderate, severe, extreme. It's pretty handy, so that while they're flying, they don't have to go through a whole process of making a PyRep and everything. This sort of does it for them. So I think this is a great segue into the GA space. I think like us in the aviation business perhaps don't think too much about turbulence in terms of being afraid of it. Perhaps we think of it more as speed bumps along the way and kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. But certainly for passengers, it's who are lay people in the aviation space, might ruffle some feathers. And I think being able to predict it better and manage it better is always huge.
No, it is awesome. I've thought of a few times right now as you were talking of having passengers and just them getting rocked, where I'm like, this isn't so bad, but I can see how this is pretty bad for you since this is. On a small plane, it kind of feels like, not to us, but to a lot of people, sketchy. Like, it's just like, why is this moving around so much? But
especially out there where you are in Colorado, you get that mountain wave action coming off.
It's the worst.
The wind gusts.
It is the worst. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, sometimes you'll be flying along and it's like super smooth and then just get knocked out of your seat. But hopefully we can, find that spot with this new feature. I'll for sure make sure like my account's up to date and I got that next time I go flying. But
got another cool GA story for you that I came across as a Washington DC native. I thought this was very, very cool about the flyover, the GA flyover that's going to be taking place here. I think in just a couple of weeks. They're going to go right over the nation's capital, and that's pretty unheard of today. So I thought that was very interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, it's May 11th, so hopefully it doesn't get rained out here, how some others have gotten rained out in the past. No, I think it's really cool. 85 years GA, hosted by OPA. I have some friends over there, and they've done some rehearsal flights already. I think it's going to be pretty fun. I think you can still participate in it, but I might be totally wrong. I'd just go check out what's going on there. If I was in DC, I would want to check it out. It sounds pretty cool. It's a pretty unique experience for GA pilots because flying through that airspace is pretty much, most of the time, it's just basically restricted airspace unless you have a, IFR flight plan or get special permission to go in there. But check it out if you're in the area. Fly in it if you still can. I would. But what do you think about like the air traffic situation there?
Oh, yeah. I think it's, it might hamper some departures and arrivals at DCA there for a little while, but, it's certainly unheard of, I guess. these days, especially flying GA aircraft through that restricted airspace there in the capital. Uh, I think all of them. I read all of the participating pilots have to go through a special security vetting process before. Makes sense. It's really interesting. One time I did see, I guess growing up there, they do flyovers quite a bit, military flyovers, obviously of Arlington Cemetery, which is right across the river from Washington. And there was a couple times where they've done commemorative flyovers downriver. They get pretty close to the Capitol, and it sounds like this will be very, very similar to that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was part of one similar to this in 2020 during COVID. I think it was 2020, might have been 21. One of those years. But yeah, you do have to get like Secret Service approval. You send in all your info, tell them everything about yourself. And I think they also do a FBI background check quickly on you, which is fun. But yeah, no, I feel like if, opportunity's still there, go check it out. I'm sure the content from it's going to be awesome later on. But yeah, if you want to practice that flyover, download Infinite Flight and practice it on your iPad.
A little bit of a plug there to our guests that are coming up. So really cool. I started flying on my iPad Infinite Flight years ago, probably when it first came out. And you'll learn in this interview that we did that they started only with San Francisco Bay Area. Now they have graphics from around the world. And I, to be honest with you, I was definitely a flight sim kid. I had the whole setup. Had Microsoft Flight Simulator X, had the yoke, had all the stuff. And I really, really kind of got, I don't want to say bored of it after a while, but, obviously grew out of it. And it was great to have it on your iPad, just so you could just have some fun with it. You can do anything from a Cessna 172 all the way up to A380. Now they just reworked that. So it's really, really well done. And they have, obviously, as you'll find out, some more stuff in the works. So, check it out. If you're at the Flight Sim Expo, they're certainly going to be there. And they're also going to be at Oshkosh. So here's Laura and Jason. All right, we got Jason and Laura here from Infinite Flight. Laura, why don't you start with a little introduction about yourself and what you do over there at Infinite Flight?
Hi, so my name is Laura. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Infinite Flight. Started the company a few years ago, almost 20 years ago now, as a side project, and been passionate about aviation and programming my whole life. And when you mix the two, simulator comes out. So this is kind of how it started. And then I moved on to work in video games, graphics industry, and kept working on Infinite Flight for a long time. And then made this project eventually a full-time gig with a friend, Philippe, who became the co-founder of the company. And one thing led to another, and now we have about a dozen people working with us on this project. And my day-to-day activities are leading the company, making decisions, and also I'm still very much hands-on coding. And I work on nowadays in flight physics, aircraft systems, autopilot, multiplayer systems, all kinds of things. We're very multi roles at this company.
Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Jason Rosewell, and I do marketing, digital marketing and partnerships here at Infinite Flight. I'm a private pilot just as of about 3 years ago and 4 years ago now. And my job from day to day consists of doing things like this and making sure that all of our events that we attend, Oshkosh and Flight Sim Expo and things like that, we're ready to go. And our equipment is there when we arrive. And making contacts like with both of you and handling our social media along with my colleague Dan and just wearing several hats, trying to make sure things run smoothly.
Cool. Well, tell me, I know a little bit about the story, but it's a very cool one. So after you talk a little bit about the story of how you brought Infinite Flight to life to where it is now, and maybe give a little background first on what the app is and what it does and kind of the use cases for it.
So the app is basically a flight simulator that runs on mobile platforms, so iOS, Android, tablets, phones, and the big advantage it has is you can bring your simulation on the go with you anywhere, and also even at home, since it's the footprint that it has on the device, like it's very small. You can be on your couch, take your phone out of your pocket, and start a flight within seconds. We have, even though it's on a mobile, people assume that it's not going to be as fully featured as on other platforms. But we do have a vast selection of aircraft with their own flight physics. With the autopilot, we have a map with full flight planning system. We have instrument approach procedures, so it set stars, approaches, and ForeFlight connection as well. So, and what else we have? Yeah, multiplayer. So multiplayer, you can play with fly with other people, either as an aircraft pilot or as an air traffic control. So other people can direct traffic as tower, ground, approach, all kinds of frequencies that we have, and you can fly on 3 different types of servers. We have casual for just having fun with friends, training when you want to be a little serious, and expert if you really want to follow rules. And the controllers there are vetted, trained, and allowed to also issue violations if you're not following the rules. And we host events every other week, or it's either hosted by the company, by our community manager Dan, or hosted by community members who organize a theme, and they have ATC organized for that event. So it's pretty fun, and it's very versatile. And we have, I think, about 50 aircraft, hundreds of liveries that you can choose from. So it's a very fully featured simulator, despite it being on a mobile platform. And one of the questions that people ask us all the time is how do you control the aircraft? It's basically by moving the device around, kind of like a yoke on a Cessna, for example. You just move the yoke in front of you. It's very similar to that. It takes a few minutes to get used to, and we've seen that at Oshkosh and different events where we just give people the device, and in a few minutes they're comfortable with the controls.
It's a personal favorite of mine. I've been known to start a flight early in the morning before I start work and finish it after work to kind of decompress. So now Kevin knows why if I go offline for an hour at the end of the day, it's usually because I'm trying to shoot an approach. Anyways, so tell me, kind of about how this started, and Laura, how you kind of came to be here, and kind of the work that went in behind it, because I've seen it over the years, several years now since I've had it just really upgrade to something that's it's very, very well done. Tell me a little bit more about how that started.
So the story, the long story short, the initial project was I was a student in engineering school in Paris, and I was working with friends on video game projects. And one of the assignments that I had out of my team was to work on a physics engine. So basically anything that has to do with the physical world. So objects that fall, things you can shoot, and how they move and react in a physically based manner. And there was I was playing around with some examples, and there was a car that I was driving around that world, and it made me realize there was a way to apply forces to the car if it was flipped over, and it made me realize that I could apply those forces on the car based on an angle of attack and an airspeed, and it would in theory make the car fly. And this is how the whole thing was started, because this is what I did. I put wings on that car and made it move forward, computed the angle of attack and velocity, and it actually made it fly, just like it would in the real world. And then I changed the model to an airplane and started a new project based on that. And I was working on that solo for a few years. So building, a world, some aircraft, and just experimenting with the physics, the autopilot, a whole bunch of things, just experimenting in my early 20s. And after graduating, I moved to the States to work for NVIDIA. I stayed there for 6 years, and I was still kind of moonlighting on this project. And then one day I talked to a friend who I was kind of having a crisis of faith on the project, because I was like, what do I do with this? It's a simulator, but I can't really sell it. It's not complete. Nobody's going to buy anything that's this quality, because it was basically like a project. And this person told me, you should find somebody else to work with. And this is when I was working with Philippe Rollin, a friend from school who got me at NVIDIA. And I asked him, did you want to work with me on this project? Because it's a huge, like making a flight simulator, you basically have to know a lot, because there's physics, there's math, there's weather, there's a database, there's graphics rendering, there's math, like there's a whole bunch of things that you need to know and apply and code. And I said, it's too much for me. Do you want to help me and take some of the parts that I don't like, and I'll do the parts that you don't like. So we kind of separated the tasks and started working nights and weekends on this until in 2011. Before that, it was around 2009 when Microsoft, they canned Flight Sim 10, or like the next evolution after FSX. We kind of saw this as an opportunity to bring something new, because there was only one last player on the market. So we decided to just try something on PC. But in the meantime, Microsoft sent us a demo unit of a Windows Phone device. And we're like, why don't we bring this to the phone instead? Because we'd be the first ones on that platform. It's a good opportunity for us to be there. So we eventually ported to Windows Phone, got it out. And Windows Phone, despite being a great platform, was actually struggling because there was not a lot of apps at the beginning, and Microsoft tried to push it. It was difficult for it to start. So after a year, we decided, let's try to port it to iOS. So we did the port, and this is when things took off. And back then it was just Philippe and I, and about 3 months before we shipped, I quit my job and basically just jumped out of a plane without my parachute, and with the intention of finishing, kind of suing the parachute. And we shipped in March 2012. It's been working ever since, and it was a great bet. It was a risky bet, but it was a nice bet to do. And we've been on Android after that, and made evolutions to the simulator pretty much like on a yearly basis. We update multiple times a year. Added new aircraft, new systems, added multiplayer, the entire world. And at the beginning, it was just the San Francisco Bay Area, one aircraft, the 172, and that was it. And so we just added, iterated. So I think it's a good example of how, sometimes you just got to start, and you don't know where it's going to go. Just start something and then keep adding to it. We never know where it goes. And then after that, we had Jason and others come on board from the community to help us out with different aspects of the sim.
So I have a question real quick. So at the beginning, what was the audience like? What were the initial consumers, and has that audience kind of changed as it's evolved and gotten more, not complicated, but more features, more realistic in a way?
I think it's stayed pretty consistent throughout the years. We've had lots of teens playing the sim, and also it's just such a eclectic group of people that play the app. We've had music conductors, we've had the jobs I remember, like a shipping boats, like a shipping container captain of a ship. I don't know how they were called, but like someone who was driving those big ships, basically. We've had a lobster fisherman in the Bahamas. We've had it's just such a random group of people.
Astronauts.
And it's been, sorry?
Astronauts.
astronauts also. Buzz Aldrin actually used the
Oh,
F
nice.
at some point. Yeah,
Oh,
he tweeted
wow.
about it.
Was
back
he
in,
able to
like,
land the shuttle, though? See, that's the question.
All right.
he says he was having difficulty landing the 172. That's what he said. It's still on Twitter. If you go on Twitter, you can find his tweet about that. So it's pretty big achievement. And we've had such a great group of people, and it's funny how now, the people that we knew back when they were 15, 16, 17, just starting the app when the app was really young, are now in the airlines, different kinds of jobs. It's just super interesting to see the evolution, how Infinite Flight kind of sparked their interest, or at least helped their interest in aviation. Especially true now, because like kids today don't have PCs to begin with; they have iPads, phones, so we're right there to kind of capture this market.
Kevin says I'm an iPad kid, but I think I'm a little too old for that.
That's not a compliment.
Yeah. Have you guys
I think so, yeah.
have you guys heard of stories? Have you heard of stories of people having this as their kind of intro into aviation and then eventually getting a license or getting involved in some deeper way?
Yeah, the stories that we hear, the most of these stories when we do events like AirVenture and Oshkosh, where we have people come up to the booth that actually are not part of the community at all. But they'll walk up to the booth and say, "Hey, I'm just passing by, but I wanted to say thank you. Infinite Flight got me really interested in aviation, and now I'm a CFII and on track to fly with Southwest or something." So we get people coming up to have those conversations with us more often than I would have thought, which is really nice to hear. Especially, part of my job with Infinite Flight is to we attract usually males in their late teens, early to late teens. That's kind of where the bell curve of users tops out. And so that's that for us. That demographic is a slam dunk. But what we would love, what part of my job is to say, hey, that there is practical use. And I hope Ryan would agree that for pilots. And Laura and Philippe both said, hey, Jason, when you're getting your PPL and you're doing your training, try to be as objective as you can and use Infinite Flight where it makes sense. And so for me, that meant practicing my solo cross country over and over. Here in Canada, we can't use ForeFlight on our flight test or Garmin Pilot. We have to use a paper chart in an E6B. Oh yeah, we're still a little bit in the Stone Age. Laura made fun of me for that, but I'm actually thankful that I did learn how to use those tools because it sort of taught me why I'm doing certain things in ForeFlight. I don't use them now. I mean, I will if I'm getting another rating, but I'm thankful for them. But the point is, I'm really not good at math. I'm not a very linear thinker sometimes when it comes to that stuff, and so that was a worry for me at becoming a pilot. So I took my iPad, and I could fly my solo cross country route in Infinite Flight on my office floor with my huge chart and my paper nav log and all of these things. And I would just do it over and over. And I would try different routes as well, just so I could say, okay, I'm visualizing this on the chart. Now I'm visualizing it in Infinite Flight. And I'm going to see, because we have density, altitude, winds aloft, temperature, pressure, all those things in Infinite Flight. I could actually compare the speeds in the 172 and see if I'm being able to do my speed, distance, time calculations correctly until I was comfortable with them. So, and we've gone from that to being able to do more advanced things, as you know, Ryan, like shooting an approach. We had someone come up to our booth last summer and say, I've got all of my instrument students using Infinite Flight so that they can visualize these approaches first before they spend money burning gas in the airplane, which was really cool to hear, because you can, use a camera view that puts you under the hood. I don't recommend taking off like that. That's very hard to do in the sim. But once you get the autopilot set and you can track a VOR if you want to, We even have beacons in the app if you're still, for some reason, using those. So there's a lot that you can do. And to bring that back to my initial point, part of my job is to sort of speak to that pilot community. And one way we're doing that coming up very soon is a partnership with Sporty's Pilot Shop that we haven't officially announced yet, but I can say that much at least, where their customers are going to benefit from using some training scenarios in Infinite Flight. And then our customers will be able to benefit from that as well. And now we have flight schools coming to us saying, hey, this is something that we think will work. And to tie into Laura's point, those users have grown up with Infinite Flight and now they're in the commercial space and they're going, well, I have a solution that we can use. So that's exciting to us because it's been, it's been six years, and so the evolution of being able to have multiplayer and ATC and, flight with other pilots, global, and then 3D airports, has been just an exciting thing to see. And now all of that's coming in very handy.
No, that's incredible. I mean, to be honest, until Ryan really gave me the whole deep dive into Infinite Flight, I didn't realize how complex it was in a good way, like for a pilot to practice approaches and all that. And I also think it's a great low barrier to entry because we always talk about, hey, practice on sim, practice your instrument approaches on sim. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to pay $4K for a PC and hardware and all that. But it's awesome that you can do it just on an iPad here, same iPad you use for ForeFlight.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're in pilot training, I think most people would agree that if you are spending $10 a month on something like Infinite Flight for a subscription, that's a drop in the bucket compared to the rest of your training. And as far as a practical tool that you can use to be more proficient while you're not burning gas, we think it's worth it for sure.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, no. So you answered my question about partnerships with different companies and getting into the whole flight school industry. But I did want to touch on a tweet you guys had about some students from Berkeley and Stanford using the Vision Pro with Infinite AI. Is that something you guys want to get into eventually? Is virtual reality in that space?
Yeah, well, why don't I give a little context to that, and then Laura, you can answer Kevin's question. So there was a group of students from Berkeley University, and they were participating in a hackathon. And one of the students is like a OG Infinite Flight user from way back. And so we had a call with them after because we saw it on LinkedIn, and we said, "Wow, this is incredible." What they did essentially was they used Infinite Flight and the Apple Vision Pro and ForeFlight and some so AI and AR to do a proof of concept that flight training can be a little more cost effective and safer if pilots are able to have this immersive experience and train with a few of these things like ForeFlight or whatever EFB. And so they put a presentation together, and it was really, really cool as a proof of concept. So we had a conversation with them, and I asked Luca, the person that's used Infinite Flight for a long time, and I said, "What made you choose Infinite Flight over some of the other options that you had?" And he said, "I'm just going to be honest. I told my team we're using Infinite Flight, and there's no discussion." because he said it's the portability and it's what I know for so long, and I think it's the perfect solution. But then Laura, you can get into sort of the VR aspect, I guess.
Yeah, I think VR is a perfect approach to flight training, because it really, like, it's not something where you have to move. I think the issue with VR in general is when the body has to move, that's when you get dizzy and weird. When you're actually sitting somewhere, it's a perfect approach. And I've been convinced about VR for years. When I got just a quick story on this is I was at Philippe's place in San Francisco, and he showed me the first demo I've ever did with a flight sim that had like satellite imagery. And I was flying an F-18 over San Francisco. It was amazing. And then when we walked to the restaurant after that for lunch, on the way there, I kind of caught my brain about to say like, hey, I was out there like, up here like 5 minutes ago. And it was kind of like a processing system in my brain, like kind of like a sanity check on what I'm going to say. And it's like the temporality was wrong. Like the possibility of being over San Francisco was possible. I was flying all the time from Palo Alto. So like that was possible. The F-18, not so much, but like the possibility of it, but just the temporality just didn't make sense. It was 5 minutes ago. Like it's something didn't match. And this is when I realized like my brain was actually tricked enough to actually make me want to say something like this. And like, to me, this like, if it's well done, it could probably even replace like for pilots that are not able to fly, or even like they want to. I think it gets you really close to the experience of flying. That it gets the flying itch. It takes it off a little bit more than just flying on a PC. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Well,
I think
some airlines, especially regional airlines, have started adopting that into their flight training curriculums too, some VR stuff, which is kind of interesting to see, because that's totally new. Airline training world, it's like moving stones sometimes. So it was really interesting to see them kind of doing that. But so where do you see, I guess talked a lot about some of these partnerships that are going on. Do you see there kind of a continual flight school angle here, flight training angle? Do you think there's some, broader opportunities to venture into like even kind of the lower early stages of airline training? What are y'all feeling in terms of that?
The answer from me is a very emphatic yes. I actually have some conversations happening right now that unfortunately I can't get into because there's nothing solid. But a lot of airlines, this is a hint. There's a lot of airlines that have pretty comprehensive programs for youth. And that's something that we're currently exploring. So I think there is an opportunity dealing with the FAA and getting into, an official training syllabus is a different story. That's, as you know, that would be a very long haul. Something that we're certainly open to, but our simulator is not certified for flight training, so it's more of a practice tool at this point. And so, I think the opportunity is certainly there. And with this flight school that we're partnering with in Utah, I think there's going to be a really good case study there for us to go to some of these other potential partners and say, these are some areas that we can, I think, help enhance for students, because the barrier to entry is so low with Infinite Flight. You don't need to go to any specific location to use it. You don't need to have a PC or a high-powered Mac to use it. You can literally just pull a phone out of your pocket and you can use that. So those are some of the things that I'm excited about. And, we've been partnered now with Flight Radar 24 for a little while. So if you use their 3D view, you can see Infinite Flight's aircraft models there. So that's been really useful for sort of helping get the word out. And it's just cool. Like, what AvGeek is not using some sort of flight tracker on a pretty regular basis and having notifications pop up. So I think the snowball is starting to roll in terms of allowing us to have these conversations. So yeah, unfortunately, that some of that is to be continued. So we'll have to come back and talk about that later.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, and one other thing I should mention there too is we're having conversations with EAA so that we can potentially break into the and potentially partner with Young Eagles or the Eagles program in general. And we've talked to people like AOPA and COPA in Canada. And we actually have an ongoing partnership with COPA here in Canada to provide trial subscriptions to their members as a member benefit, which is something that's been pretty cool. And actually, even more uptake has been for anybody who takes Discovery Flight gets a free subscription trial for Infinite Flight Pro.
There's also one thing that I wanted to mention is for like on the benefits of simulation, and I think for those flight schools in general, is something that I had mentioned to the NTSB folks at AirVenture last year, because I was wondering if they had any data regarding loss of control accidents and use of simulators, but personal use of simulators, not actual time that is logged in an actual sim. Because like the advantage of having a simulator in your pocket like this, or even like just a easy sim, is you can also fool around with the plane. It's just like do whatever, just fly around and try to super short approach, like shorter approach, and like extremely short to the point where like you lose control and crash. And the theory that I was trying to verify with them is that people who've played simulators for fun a lot have experienced so many crashes in their virtual career that it could potentially help detect loss of controls of the aircraft before it happens, because they've done it so much. You know, I have a feeling that for some people that lost control of the aircraft, it was the first and last time it actually happened to them, because it never got to the point where actually, oh, it's too late, it's a spin. And something that I wanted to see, like if they had like one way to figure it out would be like to show, you know, a video of a crash of a plane, you know, like that video of the B-52 that
in Dallas.
you see that one that you know, would be to like tell people that have done sims and those that haven't. It's like, tell me the point of no return if you can point it. And I'm sure people who've played sims and crashed so much because they were just doing random things will probably be able to point out the exact point. It's like, too late. You could recover, but now it's too late. And I know this because I've done it so many times in short approaches on an A380 that, you know, this is the point where it's too late. And that's something that also
go too well.
Yeah. That's something that I think VR could also help in that case, because then you're literally in the cockpit. You're feeling like you're training your brain on the attitude and what's going to happen before the control is lost.
No, it's really interesting. It sounds like a flying research piece, Ryan.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
We can dive into. Yeah.
What's sort of the next iterations of Infinite Flight? Where do you see the platform going from here? Without getting into too much detail, obviously.
There's what I tell people is, as long as we don't simulate every particles in the universe, the simulator is not done. So that's obviously a very long-term goal. But just, you know, there's things that we're missing, maybe more in-depth system simulation, better weather, better rendering, better performance. I think we've covered like the main areas, the aircraft, like we just go up to a certain quality that it makes sense for us, like bang for the buck kind of thing. But I think the next evolution will be a little improvement in rendering and weather simulation. And there's other projects that we haven't talked about. But part of also the whole training aspect is building this scripting / scenario system where you can tell a story, whether it's for a lesson or for entertainment. You know, that there's some people that have done that build scenarios in tests where you take off from an airport and then they just cut an engine on you. And you just didn't assume it was going to be like this. And then, you know, it's kind of the surprise effect. And you can do that today in Infinite Flight. And the the current development stages that we're at. So that's one of the things that we're trying to bring, and that's going to be part of the partnerships with flight schools. There's many other things, unfortunately, that I can't talk about. There's other different engagement types of things, but we want to try to really take full advantage of the community. There's things like over the demise of some social media platforms and the disconnection of everything, where people have fled from different social media. We kind of want to not capture, but take advantage of what we have already, because we have a vast community of users that share this interest in aviation, and we could probably just use that a little more and provide more support and more things for them to do around the app.
So I have kind of a follow up to that. Sorry, Ryan. Yeah, it's it's kind of something to do with iteration, but you guys have recently, I guess, integrated the Yaman Arrow, which for those who don't know, it's basically a controller with all your flight controls on it. I've never used it. Looks pretty interesting. Kind of want to try it. But what has been the feedback from your community that's been, just flying on iPads and phones and now having a physical controller with flight controls on it?
The feedback has been, so the Yaman doesn't work natively out of the box on iOS yet. So to use it on iOS, we have a few, our community, we have a 3D or a third-party category on our forum, and we have third-party developers that are making flight trackers and things like that. And there are a few apps that you can use to use a laptop or a computer to connect the controller and then connect to Infinite Flight over the network. So that's one way. Laura and I have used Raspberry Pi to run a script that she wrote that allows you to plug the Yaman straight into, or any controller that requires you to plug in, and then connect to Infinite Flight over the network as well. But it does connect straight into Android out of the box. And so it's been cool. We've had the Yaman, we had a prototype hooked up at Oshkosh and Flight Sim Expo, and people walk up to it and just start trying it. And actually one guy came by the booth specifically. He was a volunteer at Oshkosh, but he came to the booth so that he could, he unplugged the Yaman from our rig and plugged it into his phone because he wanted to try it so badly. So yeah, it's been cool. I'm excited to see if these guys can actually have it work with iOS natively. That would be amazing. That's very, very hard to do, to work with Apple to do, as far as I understand. And Laura can maybe provide more detail, but yeah, it's really fun to use. And but I do most of my flying on iOS.
I think the reason why they don't support directly out of the box is if you try to implement support for joysticks or controllers in general on Android, you realize what a mess it is, where each vendor does their own thing. Sometimes, it's just very difficult to implement it. But we have support natively, like Jason said, on Android. So if you have a tablet like a Samsung S tablet or all the S phones, you plug in one of those dongles that have HDMI out, USB A inputs. You can charge a device like this, plug in a joystick, keyboard, and mouse, and you basically have a mobile setup that works from anywhere. This is what my son uses every day with his friends, and they all have the same setup now because they all saw that the joystick is a little bit easier when you're not on the move. It's easier to play with a joystick. But the great part is you can start a flight like this, and then you can take the device, go somewhere else and continue your flight.
I will say to just follow up quickly that it works as advertised, and it's really highly configurable. This isn't an infomercial, but I'm just a big fan of John and Tom and those guys, and I think they're doing something really cool. So I'm rooting for them. I hope that the sales are huge and that they can keep iterating.
Cool. Well, where can somebody, if they want to meet you all, I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it. Where can they find you in the next couple of months?
I'm so glad you asked that. That's going to seem like we planted that question, but
It almost seems like we did, doesn't it?
it does. I promise we did not plant any of these questions. So we just got back from New York City where we had a meetup. Laura and Dan were there with me at the Intrepid Aviation Museum, which was really awesome. It's a decommissioned aircraft carrier, and you can see the Concorde parked beside it and do a tour through there, and you can get a tour through the whole ship. Yeah, it's amazing. If you're in New York City and you're like anywhere near downtown Manhattan, it's a 20-minute walk from like Times Square. So highly recommend you go there. We're going to be in Toronto at Pearson for some plane spotting on June 19th. So you can join Dan and I there. We will be at Flight Sim Expo on June 22nd. And we always do a community meetup. The event is at the Rio, Las Vegas, so not on the Strip, but we will probably try to do, this is actually, I don't know if Laura knows this, but we're probably holding our community meetup at Kiss World, which is,
I think I've
like the
heard,
rock
yeah.
band.
Yeah.
They have Kiss World at the Rio, and it's all ages, and it's right there at the hotel. So that should be hilarious. And then we'll be at London Heathrow Airport on July 7th for some plane spotting. And then July 22nd to 28th, we'll be at Oshkosh again, Hangar C, right across from Best Tugs by the front entrance. So we'll see everybody there as usual. And at the end of each day, we usually do a landing competition at our booth in the last half hour of the day at 4:30. And you can win some free Infinite Flight swag. We usually have t-shirts and keychains and pens and stuff like that. And then lastly, we are meeting up at Amsterdam. I don't know how the proper way to say this.
Schiphol. Yeah.
Airport in the Netherlands, August 17th. So we're doing a community meetup there for lots of plane spotting and nerding out as usual. So there you go. Lots of opportunities this year.
Nice. It sounds like I should get practicing for the landings competition, it sounds like.
One of the cool thing is that people show up with their phones directly there at the booth. Same as the Intrepid the other day during the lunch break. People just busted their iPads out, started playing, in the cafeteria. That's pretty cool.
Ryan, you fit right in, iPad kid.
I know. I can't. Nobody will let it down around here.
Just bring your iPad and your Tito, and you're good to go.
There you go. Well, thanks, guys, for coming and talking to us today.
All right, thanks for listening to this episode of Inside Aviation. You can check out Infinite Flight on any of the app stores. Check out their website, follow them on social media. Best way to support AvWeb and any of our publications is to become a subscriber. So, check out Flying Magazine, Plane and Pilot, Kit Planes, Aviation Consumer, IFR Magazine, and Aviation Safety Magazine. Also sign up for the newsletters. They're pretty cool. But catch you guys next time.